Hi YouTube, welcome back. I'm Brian with the Science Factory, and today we're going to be testing to see which of these cereals is the most magnetic. Now, for this experiment, you're going to need a really strong magnet. These are called neodymium or rare earth magnets. And these are the best kind of magnet to use. If you don't have one, you can just use the strongest magnet you have in your house. You're also going to need a container of water, and something like a measuring cup is helpful because it's easier to pour out of. You'll need some plastic bags. You're also going to need at least one kind of cereal to test. I chose to test 3 different kinds of cereal because I wanted to know which one's the most magnetic. But try any cereal that you have at home and let us know what your results were in the comments down below. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking to yourself, what do you mean which cereal is the most magnetic? Cereal isn't magnetic. I mean, just look at this. The magnet just falls right off. Obviously not magnetic. But cereals do usually contain iron, and iron is magnetic. It's one of the metals that is attracted by magnets, and because there's very small trace amounts of iron in cereal, can we tell which cereal has the most iron in it just by investigating the cereal with a magnet? Of course, we could read the nutrition facts instead of doing this experiment, but I think it'd be a lot more fun to try finding out which one has the most iron by using a magnet, and then afterwards we can compare our results to the nutrition facts here. So I'm not going to look at the nutrition facts. So today we're not going to read this. We're just going to pretend that it's not there. Now for this experiment, if you're only using one kind of cereal, you don't need to be too careful about the amount of cereal that you add into the bag. But if you want to compare different cereals to see the amount of iron in each one, then you're going to want to be consistent. So because we're comparing different kinds of cereal, I'm going to use a measuring cup. It doesn't matter too much which size measuring cup you use, but I would recommend somewhere around a half a cup to a cup. So the first step is we want to pour out our cereal into our measuring cup. And then for our second step, we want to put all of the cereal into the bag, just like so. Now I should mention, by the way, if you're doing multiple kinds of cereal, make sure you label the bag, because this cereal is not going to be recognizable once it dissolves into the water. Next, we're going to take some water and we're going to add it until the bag is mostly full. Afterwards, we want to squish out as much air as possible so that the cereal can take up all of the space in the bag. And then we want to seal the bag so that nothing escapes, and make sure it's nice and tight, double check it, and then we're going to let it sit for 1 hour. Now, if you're using a cereal that has dark colored pieces, you might want to remove those because it's going to make it difficult for us to observe how much iron there is in the cereal later on, because the iron is also dark in color. Now, I went ahead and separated out all of the chocolate ones from the Reese's Puffs, as I said, and we're going to let these sit for 1 hour, because in order for the iron to be attracted to the magnet, we need to free the iron from the cereal because it's inside of the cereal. It's one of its nutrients. So we're going to let these sit for an hour until they turn to mush and we can free the iron to run towards the magnet. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. Alright guys, so it's only been about 30 minutes, and remember we have to let this sit for about an hour. But I noticed something really cool that I've never seen before when I've done this experiment. And I think it's because I'm using a more powerful magnet than I've used before. And I noticed that I'm able to get the cereal to move without touching the bag. I want you to pay attention to this one and this one. They seem to be the most magnetic pieces that I'm seeing. And it's very weak, but I'm able to move it without touching the bag. Pretty wild. So we'll let this sit for another 60 minutes, and hopefully we'll be able to see some pretty cool effects. So this cereal is actually magnetic, which is not what I thought we would find. I thought we would be able to see the little specks of iron, which is what I've seen before when I've done this experiment. But using very strong magnets, we're actually able to move the pieces of cereal, and that is super exciting. Something that's very important if you're using strong magnets at home and you're using multiple ones, I'm using a plastic spacer because that way I can pull them back apart. But you also want to be careful not to pinch your hands because these are very, very strong. It's hard to pull them apart. So if you're using really strong magnets, please ask a parent for assistance. Alright, so it's been an hour, and as you can see, the cereals are pretty mushy at this point. I actually, at about 30 minutes, decided to come in and massage them a little bit just to break them up a bit more. The Cheerios had a hard time breaking down, but the Reese's Puffs and the Special K fell apart pretty nicely. Now, in order to view your results, what you're gonna wanna do is take your hand and put it over the magnet, and then flip over the bag, because the iron is heavier than the water, so it's gonna sink to the bottom of the bag. And gently rock the fluid around. We wanna let the iron find the magnet, but we don't want to pull the iron away from the magnet with strong currents. And we're going to flip it back over, and now if we look really carefully, on the edge of the magnet you can see that there are some, hold on. And now if you look really carefully, Jen, can you come down here? And now if you look really carefully, you can see the iron particles in the liquid here. If I go away, you'll see them disappear for just a moment, and they come right back. Isn't that wild? So the iron in the cereal is actually showing. Pretty cool. Did you see it? All right, so as you can see over here in the corner, there are a significant amount of particles of iron following around the magnet. I'm gonna lift up the magnet and they'll fall back in, and we can get them to come right back out. It's pretty cool. That is creepy. We're gonna try the same thing with the Reese's Puffs. Swish it around just a bit. Appetizing, isn't it? All right, and let's flip it back over. And let's see if we've got any iron particles here. Oh man, we do have a little bit. It might be hard to tell on the camera. Do you guys see that at home? There's just a little bit of iron there moving around. All right, and finally, let's look at the Cheerios. And flip it back over, and let's see if we can find some iron. All right, well, I'll tell you that I can see little tiny lines, particularly there's one right here, but it's difficult to get them visible. Ooh, there's a couple right there. There's some good ones. Watch when I put the magnet near, these are gonna disappear. You see them turning as the magnet rotates around them? So based on our observations, I'm gonna guess which of these has the most iron and which has the least, and then we're gonna look at the nutrition facts to find out if I'm right. I think the Special K definitely had the most iron. That one was easiest to get the iron flakes to appear, and the chunks of iron were much bigger than in the other ones. I think in second place was probably Reese's Puffs. When I looked at the Reese's Puffs, I could see iron flakes, but they were much smaller than the Special K. And then finally, I think Cheerios had the least iron because it was really hard, even in person, for me to see the iron in the Cheerios. All right, so let's look at these nutrition facts and find out if I was correct. So, the Special K, which I thought had the most iron, has 18 milligrams of iron in a serving. The Reese's Puffs have only 3.6 milligrams, much less. And the serving size is a little bit smaller, but not that much. So Reese's Puffs definitely has less iron in it than Special K. And the Cheerios, well, the Cheerios have 12.6 milligrams of iron. So the Cheerios actually have almost as much iron as the Special K, but I think the reason we weren't able to see it as well is because the Cheerios didn't dissolve quite as much, so maybe the iron's still trapped inside these Cheerios. Maybe it would be the case that if we used a blender for the Cheerios that we'd be able to see the iron flakes a little bit easier. Now, one thing that I wanted to point out is that a lot of people watching this at home might be thinking, well, of course the Reese's Puffs don't have as much iron because these two cereals are supposed to be healthy. But it's really important not to make assumptions. We want to make sure that we're actually looking at the nutrition facts on the food that we eat. I actually recently learned myself that Raisin Bran Crunch has more sugar in it than Lucky Charms, which is crazy. It's Raisin Bran, it's supposed to be healthy. So it's important that we actually look at the ingredients in the things that we eat, because sometimes things like Reese's Puffs, you know, it did have less iron, but it does also have a lot of vitamins and minerals that our body needs. Whereas another cereal that's supposedly healthy might not have all of those same nutrients. Of course, we also want to look at sugar content, and Reese's Puffs definitely has more sugar than a lot of other cereals out there. So gotta be careful and stay healthy. Well, that's it for today, guys. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos, and we will see you next time. What do snowmen like to eat for breakfast? Frosted Flakes.
What do pirates like to eat for breakfast, matey? Cap'n Crunch. Ah ha ha ha.